Salutations, Jake here, and today we'll be doing a reading of Franklin in the Dark. Yep, years of Franklin content, and it only took me this long to actually do a reading of Franklin books. But this one is a special case because today just happens to be the 40th anniversary of the first Franklin book, hence why I'm actually doing a reading of it. This one's the 25th anniversary edition, but today it's 40th anniversary, so yeah, we're going to be doing something cool to celebrate his 40th anniversary. And so we shall start right now. Here's a part from Paulette Bourgeois telling us about her inspiration of how she wrote the first Franklin book, including a manuscript for the first Franklin book, which is really cool, back when it was called The Turtle They Called Chicken. And this is a letter from Brenda Clark, the illustrator of the Franklin books, telling us all that she went through in her life. And we even have some little storyboards of the story, which is really cool to see. Franklin in the Dark, written by Paulette Bourgeois and illustrated by Brenda Clark. Franklin could slide down a riverbank all by himself. He could count forwards and backwards. He could even zip zippers and button buttons. But Franklin was afraid of small, dark places, and that was a problem because Franklin was a turtle. He was afraid of crawling into a small, dark shell. And so, Franklin the turtle dragged his shell behind him. Every night, Franklin's mother would take a flashlight and shine it into his shell. "See," she would say, "there's nothing to be afraid of." She always said that. She wasn't afraid of anything, but Franklin was sure that creepy things, slippery things, and monsters lived inside his small dark shell. So Franklin went looking for help. He walked until he met a duck. "Excuse me, duck. I'm afraid of small dark places, and I can't crawl inside my shell. Can you help me?" "Maybe," quacked the duck. "You see, I'm afraid of very deep water. Sometimes when nobody's watching, I wear my water wings. Would my water wings help you?" "No," said Franklin. "I'm not afraid of water." So Franklin walked and walked until he met a lion. "Excuse me, lion. I'm afraid of small, dark places, and I can't crawl inside my shell. Can you help me?" "Maybe," roared the lion. "You see, I'm afraid of great loud noises. Sometimes, when nobody is looking, I wear my earmuffs. Would my earmuffs help you?" "No," said Franklin. "I'm not afraid of great loud noises." So Franklin walked and walked and walked until he met a bird. "Excuse me, bird. I'm afraid of small, dark places, and I can't crawl inside my shell. Can you help me?" "Maybe," chirped the bird. "I'm afraid of flying so high that I get dizzy and fall to the ground. Sometimes, when nobody is looking, I pull my parachute. Will my parachute help you?" "No," said Franklin. "I'm not afraid of flying high and getting dizzy." So Franklin walked and walked and walked and walked until he met a polar bear. "Excuse me, polar bear. I'm afraid of small, dark places, and I can't crawl inside my shell. Can you help me?" "Maybe," growled the bear. "You see, I'm afraid of freezing on icy, cold nights. Sometimes when nobody is looking, I wear my snowsuit to bed. Would my snowsuit help you?" "No," said Franklin. "I'm not afraid of freezing on icy, cold nights." Franklin was tired and hungry. He walked and walked and walked until he met his mother. "Oh, Franklin! I was so afraid you were lost." "You were afraid? I didn't know Mother were ever afraid," said Franklin. "Well, did you find some help?" she asked. "No, I met a duck who was afraid of deep water." She said. "Then I met a lion who was afraid of great loud noises." she said. And then I met a bird who was afraid of falling, and a polar bear who was afraid of freezing. Oh, she said. They were all afraid of something. Said Franklin. It was getting late. Franklin was very tired and very hungry. They walked and walked until they were home. Franklin's mother gave him a cold supper and a warm hug, and then she sent him off to bed. Good night, dear, she said. Well, Franklin knew what he had to do. He crawled right inside his small, dark shell. He was sure he saw creepy things, slippery things, and a monster. But he said a brave good night. And then, when nobody was looking, Franklin the turtle turned on his nightlight. Well, that was actually a nice little story, and it showed that even the animals that you think would be used to that kind of thing, even they can have their own fears, and sometimes those fears can be the very things that they live with. And that's the end of the story, but it's not the end of this book, because we actually have a few pages worth of information, including how it started off with a manuscript called The Turtle They Called Chicken, and everything else. And we also got some more series of books showing off all the different things that Franklin did, like riding a bike, celebrating Christmas, his first day of school, bringing Goldie home, Franklin and Bear having a sleepover, and of course when Harriet was born. We've seen all the kind of things that happen in his world, including Sam, his friend Bear, Mr. Owl, the different hobbies and foods that he likes. And we see all the different things, the different books that came out, including during the time that Franklin became a TV series. We got to see all the different merch. And we get to see book translations in different languages, which is interesting because some of these have different localized names compared to what Franklin was called in different on the TV series. So that's very interesting. And that's the end of the book. But we will have a read of the manuscript from Paulette Bourgeois. The Turtle They Called Chicken. Franklin was afraid of creepy, crawly things, slippery, slimy things, monsters, dead and alive, and very high mountain ledges. Most of all, he was afraid of small, dark places. And that was the real problem because Franklin was a turtle. He was terrified of crawling into a small, dark shell. He was the only turtle in the whole world who dragged his shell behind him, in a wagon. Everybody laughed at him. They pointed at him. They called him names. They yelled, "You yellow-bellied, chicken-livered, spineless excuse for a turtle!" Some of them called him claustrophobic. It was terrible. He didn't even know what that meant. Every night, Franklin's mother crawled inside his shell. She looked into every corner with a flashlight. "See?" she said. "There's nothing to be afraid of." Franklin expected his mother to say that. She wasn't afraid of anything. Franklin couldn't stand the name-calling and all that embarrassment. He decided to leave home. He packed some bologna and mango chutney sandwiches on rye, oiled his wagon axle, and headed south. But everybody who saw Franklin the turtle laughed and laughed and laughed. They had never seen a turtle wheeling a shell behind him. Interestingly, you can see there's like some pages behind that one. And the whole story about Franklin being afraid of his own shell came from an episode of MASH called Cave, where Hawkeye Pierce basically asked about what it would be like if he was a turtle afraid of his own shell.
You believe in reincarnation?
What?
Looking in there makes me think of all the things I wouldn't want to come back as. A snail, an oyster, a turtle. Can you imagine me as a turtle? Afraid to get into my own shell? I'd die of embarrassment, all the other turtles laughing at me in my underwear.
I know, I find that very interesting. And that is the story of Franklin in the Dark. I'm very glad to have read that, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me reading it. So yes, this is Jake saying goodbye, and peace out.